and welcome to What's Your Story? Tonight's episode is Still I Rise. If you are familiar with Maya Angelou's poem with the same title, you know why that title was selected. My guest tonight is Dr. Joanne Berger Sweeney, president of Trinity College. She is the first female and first African-American president of that illustrious educational institution. Welcome to the show, Dr. Berger Sweeney.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It is an honor to have you here.
Well, it is always an honor to interact with a proud Trinity alum.
Thank you.
Like you are.
I am, that's true. I am a Bantam.
You are a Bantam.
Absolutely. Dr. Berger Sweeney, let's start it off by letting the audience know a little bit about your background. I understand that you were born in Los Angeles, California. What role did that play in helping to shape your worldview? Talk as much as you like.
All right. So yes, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. And what that means is I have a bright and sunny attitude about life. I actually loved growing up in LA. It was a complex, interesting, multiracial environment in a way that a lot more other places in the US in the early 60s and the mid 60s were much more segregated. So I feel as though that really influenced who I am, what I care about, and how I interact with other people.
You know, I've never lived in California. I've been there several times, and there does seem to be an attitude about a way of life out there.
Right.
That's appealing and captivating at the same time.
Exactly.
So the diversity was the key to what you saw.
Right, exactly. That you really could go throughout parts of the city,
yes,
and you see people of all kinds of races and ethnicities. And that was also true, as I said, in the 1960s and 70s, well before that kind of diversity seemed to spread throughout the rest of the country. So I felt very privileged to grow up in Los Angeles.
I'm kind of envying you because I was not in a very diverse area,
right.
and my memories are of that fact that it wasn't all that diverse. So it does impact us.
It really does.
Where you come from impacts you.
It really does. And so I left Los Angeles to go to Wellesley College in Massachusetts.
Yes.
And I remember in those days, everybody didn't go visit the colleges 3 and 4 times. So when I went to Wellesley College as a first-year student, I had never been on the campus before. I'd seen pictures, I'd interacted with alums in California, but when I went to Massachusetts to go to college, it was the first time I'd ever been in Massachusetts. And I remember very distinctly my brother picking me up at the airport and driving me through parts of Boston. And I was stunned that it was almost as though there were lines and barriers.
Yes.
And this was the white neighborhood, and this was the black
Italians.
neighborhood, and this was the Italian neighborhood.
Yes.
And I just hadn't grown up, and it just looked so stark to me. So I recognized that my upbringing had been a little bit different.
When I talked to you earlier, prior to this interview tonight, you told me that your parents played a pivotal role in your pursuit of education.
Right.
Would you please elaborate for our audience on that?
I will, because I think it's important to recognize that African Americans in the United States, some have a very long tradition of higher education. So both of my parents were college educated and had graduate degrees. My grandparents were both college educated on my mother's side, and my father's father also. And my great-grandparents actually had a college degree immediately after slavery.
Wow.
A 2-year college degree. So higher education is highly valued in my family, and the assumption for all of us children, all 3 of us, were that we would all go to college
Yes.
and probably all pursue some degree, graduate degree after college. So we always thought that education was the way for a better life and a happier life.
Yes.
An educated life is an involved life, an engaged life, and a happier life. And an interesting story that someone shared with me during my inauguration, one of my mother's friends, and my mother passed away when I was 17 years old, so I was really quite young.
Yes.
And one of her friends came to my inauguration and said that my mother said, well, maybe one of my children will be a college president.
That's amazing.
I just thought that was amazing.
Absolutely.
That was amazing. So I guess for her, that was kind of the pinnacle of success.
You know, February is Black History Month.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'm sitting here talking to a person who actually made history at the very college that I went to. Tell me how that feels like. Do you feel like a piece of history, an important piece of history? Come on.
I feel as though if I can serve as a role model and help someone else recognize that it's possible for them to do it, that's the part of history that in some ways I relish, because what you hope is that you can do something that helps the next generation
If
of
I can
people.
help somebody.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's really the part of the history that I'm proud of. You know, I don't think it's the vanity part, but the part that maybe you can help and inspire somebody else.
You know, it wouldn't be fair if we didn't talk about the fact that often we encounter people who happen to be African American who really are not familiar with their history and their background and don't know the great accomplishments that they've been so much a part of, and therefore devalue education and look at it as, you know, you're not who you are if you're trying to pursue those degrees and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
You know, we don't do that. I think President Obama was talking about that when he said, when did it become fashionable to be ignorant?
Right. I can assure you, in the house that I grew up, that was never fashionable.
It was never fashionable.
And we had a very proud history of very involved and engaged you know, African American citizens. My great uncle was the poet Sterling Brown, and we were always so proud of that history. My grandfather on my father's side was one of the first African American men to graduate from Oberlin Seminary and become a preacher in the Methodist Church. And he was a preacher of the largest Black Methodist church in New York City in the 1950s and 60s. So I learned this, what I'm learning now is history, as just a part of the family stories that were shared to give you pride in who you are and where you came from.
And where you came from.
Because you know there are a lot of external influences
telling you you're not.
Telling you that you're not.
Telling you that you didn't have anything to do with it.
Exactly, and that you're denigrated and that maybe you're not as smart as someone else.
Absolutely.
And so I think my parents thought it was particularly important to instill that sense of pride in each and every one of us, their three children, so that so that each of us knew where we were from and hence get a sense of where we could go.
Absolutely.
You know, when you hear people say, I'm where I am because I stood on the shoulders of
somebody,
giants.
yes, that's right.
That's what we're talking about, that kind of sense of history and pride, to know that then somebody else will be standing on my shoulders as they reach for the next level.
That's why I chose Maya Angelou, Still I Rise. That's the reason I selected that. That's the reason.
I'm very proud that you that you decided that represented me in some way.
Absolutely.
That's a sense of pride.
We've been talking about education. For our viewers' benefit, would you give them an overview of your education? You went to Wellesley.
Yes.
And where did you teach at?
Right. So I did my undergraduate degree at Wellesley College in psychobiology. After that, I did a master's in public health.
Stop, Doc. What's psychobiology? Come on, Doc. You got to break it down here, Doc.
Psychobiology really is that that interface between psychology and biology. Nowadays, most people call it neuroscience, or the study of brain and behavior.
Okay, all right.
So I was a psychobiology major as an undergraduate at Wellesley College.
Okay.
I'm a proud product of women's education.
All right.
I then did a master's in public health in environmental health sciences at UC Berkeley. Worked for a couple of years. My PhD is from Johns Hopkins in neurotoxicology, which is the study of poisons and also drugs that affect the brain. After that, I did a postdoctoral fellowship in Paris at their National Institutes of Health, and then came back and taught at Wellesley College and was an administrator for 19 years there, taught in the Department of Biology as a neuroscience professor.
My goodness. Now, you went to Malaysia.
Yes,
now, that had an
did.
impact on you. Why were you there, and what was the impact?
Okay, so just after I graduated from high school, I was an AFS exchange student to Malaysia. And I lived with a Muslim family there, went to school in Malaysia, and I think it changed the course of my life. When you live overseas with another family and they're a different religion, have a different culture, it really just broadens your perspective and opens your mind and opens your heart in a way that you can't go through your life and say, oh, I don't want people to immigrate to the U.S. Oh, I have a prejudice against people who come with a Muslim heritage. When you have lived and worked and, with families, when they've taken you in as a high school student, it just changes your perspective on life and what it means to be a global citizen, what it means to be engaged with other people in the world. And it really started this kind of travel bug in me.
Yes.
And a desire to reach out and live in different places. So I had the fortune to live in Malaysia as an AFS student, but I've also lived in now Zurich, Switzerland, Edinburgh, Scotland, for a number of months because I just realized that I loved to experience other cultures from the inside. And what I tell people is you never feel more American than when you're living someplace else. It helps you understand a little bit more about yourself and your perspective and your culture.
Man, goodness
so
gracious.
I've been very fortunate.
Yes, indeed. Would you please tell us about Tufts, because you were at Tufts University too.
Exactly.
What did you do there?
So after I left Wellesley, I said I was there for 19 years as a faculty member and administrator.
Yes.
And then I went to Tufts, and I was the dean of the School of Arts and Sciences there for 4 years, immediately before I came to Trinity College. So that's kind of my trajectory from Wellesley to Tufts to then Trinity College.
Now, you made a decision to leave teaching. Why did you do that?
That's a really good question. And what I tell people is there are a couple of reasons. No one makes a complicated life change like that for no reason.
Yes.
But one of the reasons was that I thought administration would give me an opportunity to influence and interact with more people than I did as a faculty member in my laboratory or working directly with students, I realized that administration gave me an ability to work with more people and more different kinds of people. That was one of the things that drew me into administration. And I also recognized quite early in my life that how people interact and work together determines how well they're able to move an organization forward. That it's really a lot about how people interact with people that determines the success of what you're trying to do. So as a scientist, I worked with a laboratory and with a group of people. As an administrator, I got to work and partner with a larger group of people and have a greater impact. I think that was one of the reasons I moved into administration.
Wow. Now, did you see the movie Hidden Figures?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
You're not going to believe it, but just yesterday, while I was on my exercise bike, I watched the last 15 minutes again. And every time I watch that movie, I just start crying. It's just such an incredibly powerful story, and a story of people that for me are role models, that it's hard for me to watch it and not be very emotional about the story.
Well, I'm going to go on the record here and say I cried too.
You cried too.
I did. The scene that gets me is when she's marching with her troops. They're going into the computer room.
Yes.
You see them coming down the hall.
Exactly.
That gets me
that
right
gets
there.
you every time.
Every time. The reason I raise that is the field that you went into, science, certainly was not a female-friendly mode of career. Would you talk a little bit about that for us, please?
So it is true. You can think about science as being not the most female-friendly.
Yes.
However, what I will say is that I had incredible advisors, mentors, and supporters that helped me. And I also shared with you a little bit about my background and how supportive my parents and my family were. So when I'd hit a barrier, I would just kind of back up and kind of go around. One thing that I learned throughout my career, both as a scientist but also as an administrator, is that there are all kinds of roadblocks in life. There are always going to be people who tell you you're not good enough, you're not doing the right thing. You have to listen to what they say, process it, and then decide how you're going to move on and how you're going to get around that barrier.
That movie was very good. Hidden Figures was very good at getting that point around.
Exactly.
I mean, it was just amazing. Yes.
And I think another really interesting point about that movie was the women in that movie didn't appear to be victims or didn't accept themselves as victims.
Right.
They were presented with all kinds of problems in their lives that many people would consider unsolvable, or that they could have taken on the banner of victimization.
Going to the bathroom.
Even going to the bathroom. It was an amazing story.
Yes.
But they decided how they were going to work in their environment, maneuver, and thrive. And it was amazing because, at least as portrayed in the movie, and if you read some articles about them, these were people with incredibly positive attitudes. That they figured out how they were going to move forward and not be perceived as victims, but as people that were going to, thrive and carry a banner forward. Once again, some of those giants that the next generation of us could stand on the shoulders and reach just a little bit higher.
Just a little bit higher.
Just a little bit higher.
Now, I understand you had a child and you found out some career information on the same day. Was that right? You didn't think I was going to remember that, did you?
That's right. So the story is that I was coming up for tenure at Wellesley College.
Yes.
And at the same time, I was having a child. And I had my daughter, and the day after I found out that I had received tenure at Wellesley College, and the obstetrician came in and she said, I heard you received tenure, now you have a new baby. Let me tell you which one of those is going to change your life the most. It's the baby.
It's the baby.
It's the baby. So, it's true. And kind of looking back on that time, as you can see, I'm smiling because it was, can you imagine the incredible joy of both finding that you have achieved a major milestone in your career?
Yes.
And somebody is looking up at you as
that's totally dependent on you now. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing.
Would you talk a little bit about your kids? How many children do you have?
So I have 2 children.
Okay.
I have a.
Give your husband a shout out.
Exactly, and my husband a shout out. So my husband Urs is Swiss, and what I will tell you is that probably if I hadn't been an AFS student in Malaysia and learned kind of this, how to interact with other cultures, I probably wouldn't have married someone who was from Switzerland, a completely different culture, a completely different worldview that he brought. So that's kind of one of those influences that came from, my time in Malaysia and being an AFS student.
Yes.
But my husband, Urs, is also a neuroscientist.
Okay.
And as I started working more and harder, he was scaling back his career, making sure that somebody was at home, taking the kids to their doctor's appointment. So I think we all know that I wouldn't be where I was if he hadn't provided that kind of emotional support and the caring for the kids. So my husband, Urs, is here in Hartford, and I think loves it as much as I do. My daughter is 21 and a junior at Wellesley College. So she went to my alma mater, and right now she's doing a study away program in Germany. And staying there so she's getting her international, kind of study away experience. My son Thomas is 17, and he is a senior at the Watkinson School here in Hartford, and has been admitted early decision to Franklin and Marshall, and will be attending college in the fall. So we're just kind of a happy family right now.
Terrific. I saw a brochure from Trinity in which it said one of the most diverse classes in the college history.
That is correct.
Tell us about that, please.
So what we care about at Trinity College is providing great students with an opportunity for an unparalleled liberal arts education in an urban area. All right? That's what we do. And what we're finding is that great students are everywhere, in every race and ethnicity, in every socioeconomic spectrum. And so if we're looking for great students, we're finding them all across the spectrum, and that the classes that we're admitting are strong and diverse. And we are very proud of it. Also, I think the American dream is that higher education allows you an entree into a different social and educational stratosphere. When we accept students who are first generation, meaning that their parents didn't go to college, we're providing an opportunity, I think an unparalleled opportunity, for someone to set their life on a different trajectory. So that is what it means to me to have the most diverse class, the most first-generation students, racial and ethnic diversity, international diversity, but also socioeconomic diversity, because higher education can't just be for those who can afford it.
My goodness, what a perfect way to conclude. It's been an honor having you here, and I'm
Thank you.
just I don't know what the right word is, but it's fantastic to have you as the president of the college that I went to. I'm
Thank you.
very honored, and I have a great deal of respect for you and where you came from, the journey you made, and where you are now. And I just wanted you to know that. So
thank you.
I'm deeply honored by your coming here to do this today.
Oh, that's very nice. And I'm very honored that you are one of our alums.
Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for tonight's show. My thanks to my guest, Dr. Joanne Berger Sweeney, for sharing her story. Thank you for tuning in. Our stories are as different as each snowflake and are as beautiful and numerous as the stars. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, good night.